Hey, I'm Srini, the creator of Maximize Your Output with Mem. In this video, what I'm going to show you how to do is use MemChat and a bunch of different AI tools to create a custom children's book. You can use the vocabulary of your kids, and we'll show you how to brainstorm ideas, come up with a synopsis, generate all the images, lay it out, design it, and getting printed to create something really unforgettable. This is something I ended up doing for my nephew as his Christmas gift this year. And the look on his face made this entire process worthwhile. Now, let's get to the tutorial. So what I'm going to do in this video is show you how I used a combination of different AI tools like ChatGPT's DALL-E image generator, MemChat, and my own notes to create a custom children's book as a Christmas gift for my nephew. And this was an idea that emerged sort of organically. I just was asking MemChat about it one night. I said, generate a children's book, a synopsis for a children's book based on just what we had captured. So one of the things we decided to do, just because I was curious to see what was happening with my nephew and I wanted to learn about his own development, was I just started keeping a list of all of the different words that he had learned. And at the time that I had created this, he already had about 50 or 60 different words, and he was about a little over a year old, maybe 13 months. So we started working on this sometime in November, and it was pretty funny because there were certain things that he knew what they meant. So for example, this is one of his hilarious ways to describe coffee. He knows what it is, but that's his word for it every time he sees a coffee cup. And so I just started keeping track of all of these words, mainly because I just wanted to understand how fast he was learning. I didn't anticipate that it would lead to something like a custom children's book, which is really one of the cool things that often happens when you capture information in Mem without necessarily any purpose in mind. So that was the first step. That was the most important thing. Now, one of the things that we also did was, you can see here that this is a numbered list. But if you wanted to, for example, we could take this numbered list and say, arrange in alphabetical order. And so that way, when we look at it, it's easier to grasp. And that's optional. You don't actually have to do that. But you can see here that once we have this to work with, it's pretty nice in terms of just looking. So we could do that and we could replace it. And now we have a bulleted list of all of his words. We also changed it into numbers list because I wanted to know how many words total he had. Now, keep in mind, the fact that he had so many words in his vocabulary already at this age made this process a lot easier. And one of my friends was shocked that my nephew knew 50 words by the time he was 13 months old. But I think that was part of this. I think it could be done with fewer words. But the cool thing about this is that you end up creating a book that literally has every single word that a toddler or infant might know. So they tend to be very engaged in the book. So that's the first step. Now, the second step is creating a synopsis for this book. So what we're going to do is we want to basically create a mem so we can basically have all of the different synopsis ideas in one place. And then what you're going to do is you're going to use bidirectional links, and we're going to just type in this MemChat prompt. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have MemChat generate 3 different synopses for a book based on the word list. So we'll just go into MemChat, and what we're going to do is have it look at his word list. And the way I structured it is important here because I just wanted to have one paragraph each with a title. So that way it has a theme, and you can see here, decision making is a theme, music is a theme here, and you have a different one, which is all about adventure. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy these different themes into our sample synopses mem. Now, you don't actually have to create all of these different mems. You could just go through all the steps without ever creating all these mems. But let's go back and add all of these different synopses here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to choose which synopses we like. And I know that my nephew really loves music, so I'm going to choose that one. And so what I want to do is I'm going to take this synopsis and say, based on the synopsis below, generate a book in the style of Dr. Seuss. And now it knows that this is the synopsis. And we're just going to go ahead and take this prompt and we're going to copy it. And then we are going to have it write a book in the style of Dr. Seuss. Now, I chose Dr. Seuss mainly because of the fact that I had just finished reading a book by a friend named Ben Gutman who had written this really great book about simplicity and communication and the success of Dr. Seuss. So coincidentally, that just occurred to me to make this in the style of a Dr. Seuss book, but you could do it in the style of anybody you wanted. So let's go ahead and actually see what MemChat comes up with. It's going to basically generate a story here. And you can see here how it is breaking up the story really nicely, right? And so basically for each one of these, we're aiming for anywhere between 10 to 20 pages. So this is a bit too short. So what I'm going to tell MemChat to do is say, okay, this is a bit too short. Can we aim to make this book 15 pages? And so now what we're going to do is we're going to get about 15, and it's going to use all of his words. And so it's basically doing all these different things all at the same time. And we're getting this really customized book where when somebody like my nephew or some kid who sees this book, sees all the images, they're all things that kid recognizes, which is really wonderful to see as delightful in terms of what is happening. And my nephew really absolutely loved this book. Every time he saw the images, he would just shout them out one at a time, which was one of the most rewarding things. So now we've got this synopsis that we're going to use, or our draft. So let's take this sample children's book draft. And what we're going to do then is we're going to use MemChat to generate all the different image prompts. So what I'm going to ask it to do is say, okay, great. Based on the sample children's book draft, let's go ahead and generate a series of image prompts. So one thing that I like to do is not just ask for suggested images, but say, okay, suggest images to match with each of these different sections of the book for each page. And also, when you suggest the images, write them as image generation prompts. So that way you're having the AI write those prompts in a way that it understands. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, based on synopsis, let's suggest images for each page and make them image generation prompts. So we're going to go back to MemChat now. And what I'm going to have MemChat do is say, based on this draft, suggest images for each page and give me the image generation prompts. And so that way they come out as prompts, and then we can go directly into ChatGPT and decide what we want to do. So one of the things, so you can see here, again, one thing we have to do specifically is to remove all of the references to specific names. And that way we make sure that the AI doesn't get confused, because the AI doesn't know who my nephew is. And so what I'm going to tell it to do is say, okay, this is great. Make the prompt a bit more detailed and remove his name. Now, the style is one of those things that you are going to get to choose. One of the things that I saw when I did this the first time, I originally said, okay, make this in the style of Dr. Seuss. And of course, ChatGPT kicked back a copyright violation. So basically what I'm going to do is take this. Now, this isn't particularly well crafted, but that's fine. I can refine it a bit faster in ChatGPT. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this information right here and basically explain that these are a series of images for a children's book. Please revise the prompts so they're clear for you in order to understand. So this is one of the most effective things that you can do when you're working with a language model, is ask it like what else it needs for more clarity, and it will actually rewrite the prompts for you. So we're going to say these are prompts for generating images for a kid book. First, revise them for clarity so you understand them. And so now what it's going to do is it's going to revise them. And then what we're going to do is we are going to generate one or two of them just so you can see a example. And so now, because of the fact that it has actually got this, what we're going to be able to do is say, okay, generate the image for page 1 and do it in landscape mode. And if you let this finish here, that's the next step. And you'll basically just repeat this step for each page. Now, keep in mind, you're going to have to probably do some revision. They won't all come out perfectly every single time, but it is still very cool that you can do something so custom for somebody in your life, which is really nice. I think it's one of the really neat ways that we can use both AI and Mem to do something that actually is very human and also enhances our ability to use AI far beyond just being more productive with work. So let's go ahead and pick page 1. I'm going to say, okay, generate this image. I'm just going to stop it right now. And I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to say generate the image for, and I forgot to tell it to do it in landscape mode, but that's not a problem. And so as you'll go through this process, what you'll do is you'll just keep generating these different images. And I will show you how we laid this out in Canva. So Canva is the next step. So you're going to use a combination of tools. And you can see here that this kind of is not what I was looking for, but I basically want to say, okay, I want red, black, and white, like the book, which was one of my nephew's favorite books and still is. And so then what it'll do is it'll revise the image accordingly. And again, as I mentioned, you're going to have to do a couple of revisions, but when you're doing these revisions, one of the most important things you can do is actually ask the AI for clarification, or ask it, how can I be more clear in the way that I'm speaking to you so that we can speed up this process? The first time I did this, it ended up taking quite a bit of time, but I'm guessing if I had to do this now, it would probably still work. And this still feels a bit too photorealistic. So let's go ahead and so basically what I'm trying to do is get to the point where we're refining this. Once you create the first image, that tends to be the part that really is the most effective. So this is something from Kaizen manufacturing, where the idea is that instead of trying to do everything at once, get one right, because once you get one thing, then you basically will teach the AI exactly what you want. And then, for example, if it generates the image exactly as I want, then I can say, okay, this is perfect. Now I need you to revise all of the image prompts so that they all come out looking like this. So that's the image generation step. The next step is going to be to lay things out. And the way I did it was in Canva. So after you've downloaded all these images, you're going to just upload them to Canva. And you can see here that I basically laid all of them out, made them a background image, and then exported them to a PDF. Now, how do we get this thing printed? That's where things get a bit more complicated, but you can see here, there's a company called Pint Size Productions. In fact, ChatGPT was the one who suggested that I use this, and they have templates that you can use, and they have different templates depending on how advanced you are. And by working with the more advanced templates, which are professional designers, you may need to use InDesign and match all of the images accordingly. And then you end up with something that looks a little bit like you see right here. And this is actually a really creative way that you can use Mem to do all sorts of things. I personally just was really amazed by this entire process, and my nephew was completely delighted by this book. So now let's recap all the steps to this entire process. Let's assume that you have a toddler or an infant. You want to first create a list of words that they know, anywhere between 25 to 30, because you need to give the AI enough data to work with. We had 50 words, so that made this quite a bit easier. So again, my nephew happens to be 1, but this could be something you do for a 2-year-old or even a 3-year-old. And then we basically come up with the different synopses. And if you have lots of notes in your knowledge base, you can even apply those notes. So for example, I have a lot of notes from nonfiction books. So I thought, let's apply the concepts from those and basically make them relevant to a children's book. And then what you do is you turn the word list into a specific book. In this case, we use Dr. Seuss, but you could do the style of any author you wanted. And then we generate all the image prompts. We go to ChatGPT. We repeat this process over and over again until we have all our images. Then we lay all of it out in Canva. And then after we've laid it out in Canva, we have to find a way to print it. Now, depending on how old your kid is, you may want these board books. The reason we did a board book was that my nephew was 1. And if we gave him a regular book, he would end up tearing the pages, and these books are nice and small to hold. So that's basically the process in a nutshell of how you can use AI and tools like Mem to create custom children's book or custom creative projects of any kind. And as always, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below.